Today I want to talk about how to build a long press event. So whether you're on desktop, laptop, or mobile, we can actually build our own long press event. Now this isn't something that natively exists in JavaScript. We've got touch start, we've got mouse down, we've got click, we've got mouse move, mouse cancel, we've got touch move, touch end, touch cancel. Those are things that are built right into JavaScript, but there is no long press event, just like there is no tap event. Long press is considered to be a gesture, which is something a user does to the screen, but it's built up out of these other events that actually exist. So let's take a look at how we can do this. I've built a sample page here where if I press and hold, I get these guys. If I don't do anything for 3 seconds, they disappear, but I can press and hold and then click on here, press, hold, click, press and hold, click. So that's how this is going to work. So let's take a look at and see how this is put together with the long press. All right, the basic HTML, I've got a button with some emoji inside of it. It's just content. It doesn't really matter what it is. And then I've got a template. These are the other 4 buttons that I'm going to append inside of here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take these guys and I'm appending them right inside here, right after this, and then I'm using CSS to position them right on top of this and then animate them in the 4 different directions away from that. In my CSS, here's my transitions, my transforms. So I'm starting at coordinates 0, 0 with a 10% opacity. I'm going up to 100% opacity for all of them. I'm translating them in the 4 different directions. And then my transition applies to all the buttons. Now the main button in the middle, there's nothing to transition, but for everything else, it's going to be 0.4 seconds. So that's all it is. If you're looking for a copy of this code, you'll find a link down in the description to the code gist for this page, so you can follow along with that or just use it later as a reference. All right, let's head down into the JavaScript, because that's really where the work is. So DOM content loaded, the first page is first loaded. Add my click touch, and I've got 3 global variables. These 2 here, Timmy and Timmy long, those are just global variables that I'm using for timers that I'm doing set timeout in a few different places, and I've got these 2 variables that I use to store the references to those in case I want to cancel them. Now the delay, this is the delay that I'm considering to be a long press. You can use whatever you think is appropriate for your application for whatever it is that you're building. I'm using 800 milliseconds, so 0.8 seconds. That's what I'm considering for this web page to be a long press. Now add click touch. This is the thing that happens right at the very beginning. You can see here I'm doing a clear timeout of one of my timers. Now we'll come back and talk about this one in a minute. What I'm doing here is I'm checking to see if I'm doing this, or if I'm loading this web page on something that supports touch events, or if it's just a laptop that has no touch screen. So we're looking for this property, onTouchStart. If that exists inside the body object, document.body.onTouchStart, if that exists, it means that the browser is touch capable. And here, I don't have, this isn't touch capable right now. My laptop is not a touch capable screen, but Chrome can simulate this for me. So if I click this, it will think that it's an actual mobile device with a touch, and that's why you get this little gray circle. That's meant to simulate somebody's finger. So I'm checking to see if it's touch capable. If it is, I'm doing a loop. I'm doing query selector all for each, just in case I'm in the situation where I've got a whole bunch of these buttons on the page. I've only got one, but this code would work with multiple buttons. So I'm adding either touch start or mouse down, depending on whether or not the screen is touch capable. And then I'm calling my start, and this is the function that's going to create that delay. Now, I'm also using the options here to only add this event once. If you don't know what those are, I did a video recently on the event listener options. So there's a link to that down in the description as well. So we're going to call start regardless of which one of these that we're doing. And the start, this is where we're going to handle either the touch start or the mouse down. My EV prevent default that I've got inside of here, this is specifically, if I remove this, and I come back into the web page, like right here, I can press, hold, not an issue at all. But if I'm in the mobile approach and I press and hold, you can see I got that context menu. If I press and hold, that context menu comes up. I do not want that. So to be able to prevent this, I have to have this, and then passive is going to be set to false. That's another one of these options that we can add inside of here that make sure that we can do this. All right, so we've stopped the context menu. I'm resetting the content. I'm finding the button that I've just clicked on. So this event, I'm going to say, find the thing with this property. This could be a CSS, any CSS selector. It could be a class name or something else. I just happen to put this inside of here. I could have used a class name. I could have used an ID. I could have used some other property. But this is the way that I'm going to target these buttons. So we've got this. I'm setting the inner HTML back to this. You'll remember I said that I was going to append all of those other buttons inside of this one. So because of that, this is what I'm doing to put it back. I'm getting rid of all the other buttons if they have been previously added. So this is doing nothing the first time this runs, but in subsequent times, that's when this is going to put it back to get rid of the other buttons. Set timeout. Here's my long press. So I'm going to call this long press function using whatever button that I have right here as the context for calling this function after the delay. So the delay was that 800 that I set up above here. Right here, this delay of 800 milliseconds. This is my long press. So the start function does a set timeout and says after that delay, call this function. But what about canceling it? What if I don't want that thing to happen? If I'm in the browser and I quickly click on the button, that's not the same as a long press, and I don't want those things to appear. It's only if I press and hold, that's when I want this to happen. So we have to be able to handle both situations. I need to be able to get rid of the listeners. So I'm going to say, if the person does touch cancel, so they move their mouse off of it and let go, or they do a mouse up, they let go of it, let go of the mouse or the trackpad, then I'm going to go back to my original state with the add click touch. And that's back up to here, add click touch. And this is where I'm using this thing right here, this clear timeout, because that's the timeout for the long press. So we're saying stop the long press delay if it has started. All right, so we have that. That's the purpose of these things, is to get rid of that delay. We've started the timer, but I've got to stop the timer if the person decides they don't want to do the long press. Now I still also have the fallback where if they did press and they appear, after 3 seconds, they're going to disappear. So that is inside this long press function. So once again, we're taking the button, we're passing that as the context for calling long press. And that means inside of this function, if I use the keyword this, I'm referring to the button that was clicked. And here it is. So this is the button that was clicked. And here, I'm removing the listeners that I put in here. Because once they have started to appear, once this delay has passed, I don't want to cancel it by just releasing the mouse while the person's got their cursor on that button. I don't want them to do the long press, have these things start to appear, and then as soon as they let go of it, those things disappear. The 4 additional things disappear. I don't want that to happen. So we have to remove those listeners so that we don't trigger this again. Now, this is the 3-second delay for a lack of interaction. So another listener, so a separate variable for this one, because we could have Timmy and Timmy long running at the same time, depending on what the user's done. We're going to call this reset buttons after 3 seconds. And the reset buttons all it does is it sets the inner HTML back to the icon, back to the emoji. This means that we're losing those 4 buttons that we've injected inside of there. So with those gone, now I'm going to go back to the beginning again and add the single one-time click listener to that, or the touch start or the mouse down listener. So we've got the delay that's going to reset everything. But in the meantime, we're going to go get that template that has the emojis. We're going to clone it, and we're going to append it to our button. That's what we have here. Now this part of the code, this is something that's just specific to what I've built on my page right here. So inside of here, I'm cloning that little bit of content. I'm adding a touchend or a mouse up listener to each one of those buttons, so I know which one the person has clicked. You can do whatever you like. I'm looping through the 4 buttons. I'm adding those one or the other of the listeners to each one of the buttons to call the selected function. Same thing on each. And I'm also adding the class go here. This has to do with my animation. If all I did was append those 4 things, so if we come up here and take a look at the CSS. All right, so 4 classes, top, right, bottom, left. Top, right, bottom, left, there's the 4 classes. And then I've got another class which says what the icon is. If all I did was this, and I had the transforms attached to those 4 classes, I wouldn't get to see the animation because it's instantly added and all the classes are added to it. What I need to do is I need to wait until those things have actually been appended to the page. So I click here and I get to see that animation because they're all added without the class go. It's with the class go that it changes from the original state to the animated one. This change going from this to this, that's what I have to add after they're loaded. So back down here, we're going to say after a delay of 0 milliseconds, or I mean, you could put, hey, 5 milliseconds later. It's not going to matter what this number is. But a very small delay after the buttons have all been added, then I want to add the class go. That's what's going to trigger this animation, so I see them spreading out from the middle. All right, and the last part here, the selected function. This is the one that, hey, you've clicked on one of those buttons. I'm doing this part right here, stop immediate propagation inside of here. Because I've added the 4 buttons inside that parent button, I don't want the click event to go from, or the mouse down or the touch end event to go from those 4 buttons back to the parent one. So I'm stopping the event from bubbling up to that parent one. This is where I'm writing out in the console. So as I select and click, that's this message right here. And I'm writing it out here just to have something visual on the page happening. I'm killing the timer for the 3 seconds. That was the, hey, you haven't done anything for 3 seconds. So that's the timer that we're killing here. And I'm getting right here, this is one of the 4 buttons that you've clicked on. I'm going to take all the classes that are on there. So remember, each one of these buttons, we've got these classes. It's either got top, right, bottom, or left. And then it's got the happy, sad, or so on. And it also has go. So my button has all of these classes. For me, what I need to do is I need to extract this one, which means getting rid of top, which means getting rid of go. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm converting this class list, these 3 classes, into an array so that I could loop through it and filter it. And basically, these are the 5 things that I'm removing. If it's got go, top, right, bottom, or left, I'm removing it. And then whatever's left should be one single value, one of these 3 things. That's going to go inside of here. So this will be the string, happy, clapping, sad, whatever. And I'm going to write that out up inside my header. And then here, what I want to do is I want to loop through all 4 of those, not just the one that was clicked, but I want to loop through all 4 of them. I'm going to remove 3 of them immediately, and then the one that was actually clicked, I'm going to remove that one a little bit slower. So if we look here, I press, there they are, and if I click the bottom one, the other 3 disappear. If I click clapping, the other 3 disappear, and then this one disappears just slightly slower. And so that's what we're doing here. This button is the one that was clicked, or sorry, EV.target is the one that was clicked. The parent element is the parent button. I'm going to loop through all of its children looking for the 4 buttons. That's what this will be. This is a loop through. And if we have a match for the one that was selected, that is the one that I want to remove slower, else remove it. So the other 3 buttons are going to be removed immediately, and then we're using a set timeout with the same delay to remove that one. Once all of them have been done, that's when I'm going to call the reset function, and the reset function is the one that puts the content back, right here, puts the content back to this, so it gets rid of all 4 buttons and adds the click listener back to the main button. And that's that. That is how this all works with the long press. So there was a fair bit of code that was specific to what I was building right here. There were some interesting little things that I threw in just for fun, but the important thing here is setting a delay. So when the person starts to press on it, you set a timer. That timer is going to run, and as long as you haven't canceled that timer before the entire delay has worked out, there's your long press event. So that's the whole thing. Comes back to that one set timeout right here. We're going to call this function, do whatever you want in that function, but this is the amount of time for your delay. Call a set timeout to call a function after whatever your long press delay is, and then listen for a canceling of that. If the person is moving their mouse off of the button, I mean, we could add other things in here. We could say mouse leave, mouse cancel. There could be other events that we put inside of here that we could consider a cancellation of the long press. But this is the basic function right here. Right, so I hope that helps you out. I hope that helps you understand how long press works. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments. I will answer as many as I have time for. And as always, thanks for watching.